Hello everyone and welcome back to Planet 40k. Today is a Space Marine day here on the channel and I wanted to have a little break from the usual unit reviews that we do here. So I thought we'd go over some of my personal top 10 units within the Space Marine Codex. So this list isn't including any supplement or any chapter specific units. It's purely based on the generic Codex and it's purely based on my own personal preferences. So I'm sure some of the selections you'll agree on and some of them you won't. And I'm also sure it will slightly depend on which chapter you play too. So just as a side note here, I do play Blood Angels, although I do play them quite weirdly. I play quite a shooty list with my Blood Angels, so take what you want from that. But I do encourage you to drop your own top 10 units in the comments below, preferably in order, starting with number 1 being the best. And we'll have some dialogue in the comments. And as always, the best comment will be shouted out on our next Space Marine video in the shout out section, which has been moved to the end of the videos. So let's begin with the list then. Coming in at number 10, I've gone with the Terminator Assault Squad. So what I've done here, I broke down all the things that I like about the unit in the bullet points I've shown here. So they've got 3 wounds in 9th edition, they're strength 8 with their thunder hammers, they've got the options of the storm shield, or they can stick with the 5+ Crocs Terminator's invulnerable saves, or they've then got the option of having the double lightning claws too. They can deep strike, they're a core unit and they're just a fantastic melee option. The way I look at this unit is you're getting the storm shield for free, so if you are taking the thunder hammer that would be 10 additional points, so that would be 43 points per model, and usually you're paying around 5 points for a storm shield too. So if we take that 43 points, minus 10 for the thunder hammer, then minus another 5 which would be the storm shield, even though you're not paying for it on this occasion, that would leave you 28 points for a model that can deep strike with 3 wounds and a 2+ armor save. I think is a pretty decent bargain there if you ask me. And then in melee of course these guys are absolutely annihilating things. 2 attacks each, 1 more for shock assault, and if you're going with the claws you're going to get 1 for each claw as well, re-rolling the wound rolls. A good unit, especially if you're playing Blood Angels of course. So moving away from that, going into number 9, I've gone with the Infiltrator Squad. So these are one of your troop options. They've of course got the core keyword, so plenty of synergy with the Codex itself, from stratagems, from characters. They're also troops as mentioned, so they're not only going to have objectives secured, it also makes filling up your detachments fairly easy, especially if you're gone with one of the 3 basic ones, the patrol detachment, the battalion detachment or the brigade detachment. They've then got concealed positions so they can effectively deploy anywhere on the board more than 9 inches away from enemy models. But this pairs really well with the next ability called Omni Scrambler, which means enemy units cannot be deployed or come in from reserves no less than 12 inches away from this unit. So that's going to really affect those strategic reserves that are coming in or deep strikers coming in. So it's going to deny a lot of space. They've then got the option of the Helix Gauntlet or the Comms Array. That Helix Gauntlet, which is 10 points. Once per turn, a single saving throw will ignore damage, or the Infiltrator Comms Array for 5 points. Makes the unit always within the Rites of Battle aura or the Tactical Precision aura, depending on what Phobos character you've got on the board. So it's really going to pair nicely with a Phobos Captain or a Phobos Lieutenant in particular. They can also Combat Squad, which is actually going to really increase the Omni Scrambler ability even further, because if you take 10 of these guys, divide them into 2 lots of 5, you've now got 2 lots of 12-inch bubbles on the battlefield. So you're really denying a lot of space if your enemy's coming in from deep strike or reserves again. Then finally they're a Primaris unit, so you can be using that transhuman physiology stratagem if needed. Next we have number 8, which is the Primaris Apothecary. Doesn't get spoken about as much nowadays, but when 9th edition did first come out, this guy was an absolute hero. When he was previously bringing ATV bikes back, obviously he can't do that anymore. It did get nerfed out, but he's still a pretty decent character. You've got the option of taking him as a Chief Apothecary for 35 points, which would allow him to heal 3 lost wounds as opposed to D3 lost wounds with his Combat Restoratives ability, and he can use his Combat Revival stratagem for free as opposed to paying 1 command point for it. Then of course he's got the option of the Equital Relic, which is a pretty decent pistol, which has the potential of having a damage characteristic of a 4. Coming away from the Chief Apothecary profile, he is a character, so you can put relics on him, you can put warlord traits on him, and he's got those 2 damage 2 pistols. One of them is only 3-inch range, but strength 4 minus 4 AP with damage 2. But the Absolver Bolt pistol, which is an 18-inch range pistol, strength 5, minus 1 AP, and the damage is 2 again. So 2 lots of pistols which can be both fired in the same shooting phase, because he's only carrying pistols, both being damage 2. He's then got that Combat Restoratives ability to be healing D3 lost wounds to a unit in the movement phase of each turn, and he's got the Narthesium aura to give a 6+ feel no pain save for that unit within 3 inches. Then I already mentioned that stratagem, Combat Revival, to bring a model back each and every turn, which will easily make his points back up. And then finally again, he's a Primaris model, so again Transhuman Physiology stratagem is available. Coming in at number 7, we've got the Vanguard Veterans. Another tidy melee squad. They've got the options of taking the jump packs for 3 points each, which I think is really cheap if you ask me. If you're taking a unit of 10 of these, it's only 30 points to give them deep strike, fly and a 12-inch movement. They're also core, they've got access to virtually any melee weapon you choose. They've also got access to the storm shields for the invuln saves and the +1 to their regular armor save too. Furthermore, they've got the option of using the melter bomb stratagem. Within the fight phase, if they're targeting a vehicle and a hit is scored, the unit will suffer 2d3 mortal wounds instead of making an attack, which is fairly nice. And then they've got the Hammer of Wrath stratagem available too if you take the jump axe. So you can be throwing out more mortal wounds there if you can roll a dice that equals or exceeds enemy unit's toughness characteristic. But a fast, hard hitting melee unit, probably one of our best ones we've got in our codex if you ask me. I'd always put the storm shields and the jump axe on these guys. On to number 6, I've gone with the Outriders. So one of the new units within the 9th edition, they're basically Primaris bite units. They've got the 14-inch speed, they're core, they've got 4 wounds each, which is plenty. They've got the twin bolt rifles, which are 30-inch range bolt rifles, rapid fire 2 as well, so you're going to have 4 shots with those per bike at -1 AP or -2 AP, of course, in the tactical doctrine. Their party piece is the devastating charge ability, so whenever they actually make a charge, they get an additional 2 attacks per model on the charge, then you add it to their shock assault as well. So in total you're looking at 19 attacks from a 3-man bike unit. So that of course makes them a very good melee unit. They're Primaris again, so you'll be using transhuman physiology on these guys. And finally they've got great synergy with chapters, so depending on what chapter you're playing, White Scars have got lots of buffs to melee units, especially Bite's melee units. You've got the Raven Wing from the Dark Angel supplement, which will give them a jinx save. There's just plenty of options that you can select from. Next we've got number 5, and I've gone with the ATV Invader Squad. Another new 9th edition unit here, another bite unit as well, 14-inch speed again. These things have got 8 wounds apiece. You can take them in units of up to 3, so that'd be a unit with 24 wounds. It's going to take a lot of firepower just to shift the unit off the board. You've got the option of being an anti-horde unit or an anti-tank unit, because you can either take the multi-melters, which are strength 8, -4 AP, damage D6 or D6 +2, firing at 12-inch range, or the Onslaught Gatling Cannon, which is the same range at 24-inch range, but it's heavy 8, strength 5, -1 AP with 1 damage. Now I quite like the Onslaught Gatling Cannons. I tend to be playing a lot of Horde units as of late, but against more elite units you would take the Multi-Melter of course. And don't forget it's also got that twin auto bolt rifle, which is a 6-shot bolt rifle, strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. But 6 shots isn't too bad. And again, the Primaris, so again, you can use that transhuman physiology stratagem, which is quite a common thing with the Primaris units, as you've probably noticed by now. Next, we've got number 4, which is the ERADICATOR squad. Now, as of late, I've not actually had much luck with these guys. They tend to get shot quite early off the board. However, statistically, they are one of our better units within the Codex. So first of all, they've got the MKX Gravis armor, so they've got 3 wounds and toughness 5, so they're very tanky, very resilient. They're also core, so they're very easy to buff. Chaplains, librarians, all that kind of stuff can easily buff these guys. You can take units of up to 6 of them. So again, going back to that Gravis armor being quite tanky with 6 models a piece as well, it's going to be a real tough nut to crack. They've got 3 different melter options, being the heavy melter rifle, the melter rifle and the multi-melter, all of them at 24-inch range, but the damage characteristics slightly differ depending on which one you're taking. But their main ability is the total obliteration ability, which is why statistically these guys are so good. In the shooting phase, they can effectively shoot at an enemy unit not once but twice per model. So every single model in this unit is going to be shooting everything twice, as long as you're firing at the exact same unit that you've originally fired at. And when all the weapons are basically strength 8, -4 AP, damage D6 +2, yada yada yada, they're gonna do a lot of damage. And then to finally buff that Gravis armor up even further, again, they're Primaris, so you can use that transhuman physiology on them, which you probably would with these guys because they're quite pricey at 45 points at base cost. Okay, before we get into the top 3 units within this top 10 list, I want to go with some honourable mentions here, starting with the Blade Guard Veterans, the Attack Bikes and the Inceptors. Now the Blade Guard Veterans narrowly missed out on this list for me. They're very good in melee. They've got the mastercrafted power swords, they've got the storm shields, they've got 3 wounds each, and of course being core and Primaris and all that good stuff, they're a solid unit. The only issue I've got with them is that 6-inch movement. There's no deep strike, so you've either got to put them in an impulsor or one of the more expensive transports, or alternatively you can take them in strategic reserves, which is going to cost you command points, which is why I favour the Assault Terminators or the Vanguard Veterans, because both of those have the ability to deep strike in from turn 2 onwards, whereas the Blade Guard Veterans have got to foot slog up the board. They could be used as a counter charge unit and stay within your own deployment zone, of course. That's a very valuable way to play them. It's just not the way I play, so that's why they've not made my list, but they're definitely worth a mention here. The second mention was the Attack Bike Squad. These are a very good fast attack option. They probably did deserve to get in the top 10 if I'm honest. I just prefer the ATV Invader units. I just like that they've got loads of wounds and very difficult to shift. But this is another bike unit that's core, toughness 5 with the multi-melter again. Now there's no onslaught Gatling cannon option here, but if you are going for the anti-tank option with the multi-melter, these are a definite alternative to those ATV Invaders. Then that final mention is the Inceptors. Yet another fast attack option here, moving at 10-inch movement, toughness 5 and 3 wounds due to the MKX Gravis armor, which is quite rare because they've got the jump packs and the fly keyword, so very tough, very resilient, but also very quick. And they're a core unit as well, of course. These are your Daka guys with the double assault bolters, each model spraying 6 shots at 18-inch range, strength 5, -1 AP, 1 damage, or they can optionally take for 10 points the plasma exterminators each. That's 2 of those in fact, which are assault D3, so on average you're going to be getting 4 shots per model at strength 7 or potentially strength 8 if you're supercharging, -3 AP and the damage being 1, again 2 if you're supercharging. And they can also deep strike, so that 18-inch range isn't really a big problem. They're a very good unit that just didn't make my top 10. Okay, so let's move into the top 3. At number 3 we've got the heavy intercessors. So yet again we've got the MKX Gravis armor for 3 wounds and toughness 5, so they're very tanky. They're core, their objectives secured, so they're getting you plenty of points in your back lines. They're a Primaris unit, so again you could defend them with that stratagem. But what I like most about them is their ranged capabilities. You can select from a variety of range options here, ranging from 30 inches right up to 42 inches, all depending on what one you want. The big 42-inch range is the Executor bolt rifle, which is only heavy 1 but strength 5, -2 AP and 2 damage. Now if you wanted to downgrade that to just a heavy bolt rifle, it's only 36-inch range, but it's now a rapid fire weapon, although you do also lose a bit of AP and damage with that. But you can now move freely and not incur a -1 to hit penalty without them holding a heavy weapon. Then if you wanted to downgrade that further, you go with the Hellstorm bolt rifle at 30-inch range, but it's got 3 shots this time. However, no AP and 1 damage, so it all depends, swings and roundabouts there, depending on your opponent's list. If they're going with a horde list, you want the Hellstorm bolt rifles because you get loads more shots, you don't need the AP and you don't need the damage. If you're going against a more elite faction, such as another Space Marine faction of course, you go with the Executor bolt rifle because you've got that damage too and the -2 AP as well. I personally always take the Executor bolt rifles because when you've got a 10-man unit of these guys, they're doing work. Then finally, you've got the option of combat squadding them. As I just mentioned, I take a unit of 10 of them, then I combat squad them on deployment, so that gives you the opportunity of holding 2 different objectives. It does depend on where the objectives are. If you do have 2 objectives in your own deployment, definitely combat squad them. If there's only 1, I'd probably leave them as 1 large unit, because if I've taken the 42-inch range weapon, they are heavy, so I don't really want to be moving them too much to incur that -1 to hit penalty. I want them stationary at all times. So that brings me on to number 2, which is the Biked Primaris Chaplain. Now one of my favourite characters within the Codex. He's just an all-round beast in my opinion. 14-inch movement, 7 wounds, he hits on 2s in melee. All of his stock weapons are damaged too. He's got his 4+ invuln save with his Rosarius save. He's of course got all of his litanies of battle, which I think are mega this edition. But all the litanies are very useful. It's going to be buffing range attacks, it's going to be buffing melee attacks, it can buff your charge roll. Or you could just beef up your chaplain with the Mantra of Strength litany. It then of course could be upgraded to a Master of Sanctity, which I do every single time. Partly because he gets to recite an additional litany per turn, but also with the Warlord trait Wise Orator, you get your litanies off on a 2+ as opposed to a 3+, and if you're using that commanding oratory stratagem, it's only going to cost you 1 command point as opposed to 2. And the relic's pretty decent as well there, stopping your opponent from rerolling hit rolls, rune rolls and damage rolls against your chaplain. I think it's quite cool. But overall I do think this guy is a top tier beat stick unit. There's loads of ways to customise him with relics. One method is to use the Benediction of Fury relic to replace your Crozius Arcanum, which gives him a strength +2, -2 AP, 3 damage weapon, and wounding on 6s causes a mortal wound. But then if you use that Litany Mantra of Strength, you're going to be adding 1 to the attacks, 1 more to the strength, and 1 to the damage as well. And you can even boost this further with a Psyker, using the Might of Hero psychic ability on your chaplain to add 1 to the strength, toughness, and attacks again. So you could really pimp this guy out to be an absolute nightmare. So yeah, he's my personal favourite character that I use in most of my lists. Which does indicate that my number 1 in this list is not a character. So number 1 is going to the Redemptor Dreadnought. Now this thing's another absolute nightmare to deal with. 13 wounds, Toughness 7, it's got Duty Eternal for the -1 to the damage rolls. Now there is no Invan save, but it's got extra wounds compared to the other Dreadnoughts. It's got 13, whereas most of the other ones have got around 8 wounds. So this has got an additional 5 wounds on top of that. It's got plenty of Dakar with plenty of war gear options as well, depending on what kind of list you're going up against. You can go anti-horde, you can go anti-tank, anti-infantry. You can take the additional Icarus rocket pod for aircrafts, but it also works pretty well against infantry models too. I personally like taking the Onslaught Gatling Cannon just to get plenty of shots in. But again, if you wanted to go for the more elite weapon, you've got the Macroplasma Incinerator too. And he's not a pushover in melee either. He's got that Redemptor Fist that hits pretty hard. Strength 14, -3 AP, and the damage is D3 plus 3. So that's an average of 5 damage per attack that goes through. He's got 4 attack space. You're going to get 1 for Shock Assault. And depending on your supplement, you could even get more there. And you can even buff all of these weapons with the Wisdom of the Ancient stratagem, which I think is an absolute gem. You basically select a Dreadnought and they get either the Rights of Battle Aura or the Tactical Precision Aura. Just select one of those. So he's not only giving the buff to himself because he's a core unit, but also core units within 6 inches as well. So they can either reroll the hit rolls of a 1 or reroll the wound rolls of a 1. If you're using that Macroplasma Incinerator, rerolling hit rolls of a 1 is definitely the way to go with that. So yeah, he's also going to be working very well when pretty much every chapter going. It's very rare that you'll go up against a Space Marine list that doesn't have a Redemptor Dreadnought within that list. He's just an absolute tank. And he's not even slow either. He's got an 8-inch movement as well on top of all those stats. So yeah, a real solid unit, and that's made my number 1 from the Space Marine Codex. So before we end the video guys, I need to do the shout out of the day. This one's going to Jester Bob for their comment made on the Impulsor tank review we did recently. So shout out to you, Jester Bob. So that does conclude the top 10 list guys. I'm going to leave a link on the page now for you to check out our review of the Redemptor Dreadnought. So go check that one out. Tell me if you agree with the rating. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I will see you next time.